Chaya, you want to get this out? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So one of the topics related to Moshiach is where it says that the Moshiach is going to come. Hashem will blow a great shofar. That's the term that's used. And when he blows the shofar, then all the Jews that are dispersed all over the world will come and gather together. In other words, similar to what happens, or what used to happen in the olden days, somebody would come with a bugle in the middle of the marketplace, or in an army, they would blow the bugle, the sound of the bugle, and everybody is to gather together. So this is on a different scale. Hashem is going to blow a shofar. So if you open this up, you'll see one of the first page there is a pasuk in Yeshayahu. On top of the page it says, "V'haya b'yom hahu," and it shall come in that day. So it's important to get used to the idea. So I'm repeating it many times. And that is in the books of the Nevi'im, of the prophets. Whenever it says in that day, in those days, at the end of days, it's a way of referring to the times of Mashiach. And that day, you talk about Shofar Gadol. Do you remember anywhere in davening we have such a term? V'haya b'yom hahu.
Yeah, and Geulah and the Friday.
Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
V'haya b'yom hahu. At the end of Aleinu, right? V'haya b'yom hahu yi Hashem echad u'shmochad. And on that day, Hashem will be one, His name will be one. Again, it's referring to that day when Mashiach comes. On that day, you talk about Shofar Gadol, a great shofar will be blown. Ubaho oidim beretz Asher, all the Jews that are lost in the land of Assyria, and all those that are nedach, that are cast away in the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, which means not just these two countries, but all over the world, and they will come to bow to Hashem, Bahar HaKodesh, and the holy mountain, which is the Beis HaMikdash, in Yerushalayim. And because there's this one pasuk, then there's another pasuk, another place where it says something similar. Yes?
When it says cast away on Egypt, is it talking more like generally about diaspora, or is it talking about the women that didn't go, like that didn't leave?
But the Jews in Egypt no, it's talking about people in the diaspora. Right. In fact, there are commentaries that explain that the reason why it chose these two names, they represent two categories of people that sort of came distant from Yiddishkeit. Found it? Thank you. If you can just email it to me. Thank you. Two categories of Yidden. And it's in the words. I don't want to go into it now in detail, but it's in the words. The word Asher actually has to do with, in other words, there are two sort of reasons why Jews move away from Torah mitzvahs. One is sometimes because of wealth. People become very wealthy, have a lot of money, they're becoming very big and important, and they rub shoulders with all the big important people. And because of the wealth, it becomes very difficult. It's a big test. Because of that, they'd like to become more like their neighbors, and they assimilate. And then there's the opposite. Sometimes it's because of the poverty that people are lacking and suffering, and they feel that if they would not stick to their Jewish roots and to their Jewish community, they'd have more opportunity and things would be better for them, and that's why they move away. So it's representing two types of Jews that are sort of lost in the diaspora. And here is another pasuk, also talking about the times of Moshiach. It's underlined on the next page. This is another book called Zechariah. It's one of the later prophets. And it says, Vashem aleim yirah v'yotzer kabarak chitzeh. Hashem will blow with a shofar and v'halam b'saris teiman, and go forth in the southern tempest. But again, Hashem will blow a shofar. And because of this, we have this bracha in the davening. Turn to the next page. In the davening, that's one of our brachas. We're asking for Mashiach. We say, Hashem, sound the great shofar. So it's alluding to these words, the great shofar, for our freedom. Raise a banner to gather our exiles and gather us together from the four corners of the earth to our land. Blessed be Hashem, who gathers the dispersed of his people Israel. So clearly the blowing of the shofar is what's going to bring Jews together to unite under one banner. That banner will be Hashem and the Torah and mitzvahs. Yeah.
Is there anything that points to that this is not literal, or is it literal that we will hear shofar?
Okay, so this is actually the next word that will be coming out of my mouth. Is this literal, or it's not necessarily literal? Very good. I think you do that often.
Sorry.
It's getting a little frightening. Some hidden powers here. The question that people ask is, a shofar, I mean, when you go to shul, and if you're all the way in the back on Rosh Hashanah, you might not even hear the shofar. Someone's going to blow a shofar, and they're going to hear it all over the world, and people from all over the world are going to be gathered because of the shofar. So the answer is, okay, it's a miracle to be this miracle, that a shofar will be blown in your hair all over the world. But then there's commentary on Gemara that it said it doesn't necessarily mean a shofar literally, but it could also mean that some event will happen that's going to shake up and wake up Jews from their sleep. We're talking about a spiritual sleep, and they'll be gathered to come together to Israel. The Rebbe, in a sense, confirmed that 1967 was the famous 6-day war that took place in Israel. The 6-day war was one of the most incredible miracles. And unfortunately, if a person, sometimes use an expression, if you open your eyes, you'll see that it was a miracle. That was a miracle that you didn't have to open your eyes. If you don't close your eyes, you'll see that it was a miracle. What was going on then was miraculous. No one expected it. What was expected then was, I don't even want to bring it out of my mouth, what they were preparing for, what they thought would happen. And not only was it a miracle because Israel was then being attacked by more than one country, being attacked by Egypt, they were being attacked by Syria, and they were being attacked by Lebanon and Jordan, I think, all together at the same time. Israel was much smaller than it is now. 1967, they were still very young. They weren't as developed technologically, military equipment as they are now. And everyone's attacking them and ready to, literally, the words were, we're going to throw them into the sea. And then what happens within a period of 6 days, the entire air force of Egypt was wiped out. What Israel did then was that they destroyed all the airplanes before they went off the ground. Since then, they now put their airplanes under the ground. But then they didn't think of it, and they wiped out their whole air force within a few days. They were totally in charge. They took over the air, and once that happened, they took over everything. And in 6 days, not only that they weren't destroyed by their enemies, that's when Israel conquered much more land.
The 6-Day War.
That's called the 6-Day War. Yeah, that's why it's called the 6-Day War. And they that's when we got back to Kotel HaMaravi and Hebron and all these places which we have now. It was a miracle of miracles. But one of the things that happened after this miracle was there was an unbelievable surge of Jews wanting to reconnect to their roots. And it happened everywhere, not only in Israel, all over the world. There was a certain way it was explained where people felt proud that they were Jewish and connected to Israel. But even places like Russia, where Yiddishkeit was banned and had to be underground, there was a tremendous surge. People wanted to learn Hebrew. People wanted to go to Israel. And if you know the history of a lot of refuseniks, they didn't let them and they were stopping them. But there was a force pulling and pushing. They wanted to get closer to their roots. And so even though what we call today the Tshuva movement before, but there was a tremendous surge after the 6-Day War. So the Rebbe then said, and interesting, before people even saw the actual results, the Rebbe said initially that this 6-Day War was the beginning of the great shofar that Hashem is blowing, which means, yes, it doesn't necessarily have, it could be an event which is going to be a major event that's going to shake up Yidden around the world. Another thing that I want to bring out to you is one of the things that helps that the idea of Mashiach should be a little bit more acceptable, a little bit more, something which we could relate to is years ago, whenever we spoke about Mashiach and anything about Mashiach, everything was so distant that you needed the greatest levels of emunah to get it. We're living in a time today that a lot of the things that it says about Mashiach is something that we're able to grasp it and relate to it in a very simple way. And here's an example. Let's say if you think of Mashiach blowing the shofar literally, is it possible? How is it possible that someone blows a shofar and the whole world can hear it? Is it possible today?
Theoretically, yes.
If I blow a shofar now, for PR before you do, the whole world could be listening to me, and everybody will hear me blow shofar. Thousands of miles away. In other words, one of the things that we see today, and that constantly points out, and we should look at it ourselves, we watch things happening in this world that makes it so much. I'm not saying that the Eibush is going to do it through the internet. He can do a miracle the way he does it. But the fact that we can envision it through the internet, so Mashiach and what's supposed to happen with Mashiach is so much more like visual. We can actually imagine it in a very real way. To give you another example, okay, all the Jews are going to be gathered together. What's mean they're going to come from all over the world back to Israel, right? The world is much bigger now than it was a few thousand years ago. How long is it going to take for everybody with horse and wagon to get back to Israel? How many years do you think it'll take? So years ago, when you said everyone's going to go back to Israel, how did you imagine it? Everybody get a horse and wagon. This one's going to have to travel a year. This one a year, half a year. This person a year and a half. Depends where they're coming from, on the boats, on camels, on horses. Today, you can actually visualize. I mean, again, if all the airlines in the world would be inspired and say, wow, the time has come. We're all offering our services. Whoever wants can hop on a plane, whether it's this airline or that airline, we're all offering services. You can go to Israel. In 24 hours, you can have, I'm saying if everybody would want to go, literally in 24 hours, you can have the whole Jewish nation in Eretz Yisrael. So years ago, these things were unimaginable. You can only imagine it as something miraculous, which we can relate to. Today, you can imagine it in a very real way. And the reason for that, Hashem is making it easy for us to visualize the inyan of Mashiach. So no doubt that we believe in miracles. So it could be there'll be a miracle and Hashem will blow the shofar in some miraculous way. And if we say that it's something like the war or other events that are happening that inspire Yidden to become more closer to Yiddishkeit, then it means that Hashem is blowing the shofar in some sort of a spiritual way, and how does it manifest in the miracles that took place in the war? That's what it means. So the word shofar means shofar, figuratively speaking, something spiritual, which there are places in Chassidus, Kabbalah, and explain what that means. And when that happens up there, then it manifests down here, and there's something that happens that is so earth-shattering that everybody is inspired to go in a certain direction. Got it?
Got it.
Okay. Got the shofar too, or just the idea? Okay. So that's number one. Now I want to go to another point. You know, another little few sheets here. Chaya. Another what?
The fifth one for me. Does it say how Moshiach will come? Will would it be snow? People will be observing, or is it just going to be like all of a sudden? Does it say something about
Yes, it does say something about it. And what it says in Gemara, and we're going to be learning Gemara, so we'll be learning about it, that the Gemara actually says there are two possible scenarios. It could be one way or the other way. There are sources that say Mashiach's coming will be a gradual process. There are sources that say it could happen in a moment, everything just turn around. And it'll depend a lot on our merit. That will determine how things are going to happen.
Follow-up question. Is it like a train on a track, or is it like a lane that you could like cars, like you could like go into a different lane, like you're like it sounds like
Thank
one
you.
or two ways, like miraculous or through.
Very good question. Wow, I like the way you put it. It's like a lane on a road, which means even if it starts off gradual, it doesn't mean that it can't switch to being in a moment like really dramatic. Whoa, everything changes. There were times where the Rebbe would buy Farbrengen, and then he would say, Moshiach should come right now, and we should finish this Farbrengen in Eretz Yisrael. We'll have to ask the Shaila by a Rav, where do we make the after blessing, here or we make it over there? In other words, it could happen in a way that in this moment, everything changes, even though we're now in the process where things are happening gradually. So this is the second part. And this is also very important, very essential to the whole understanding of what we need to do today is this question on top. Is the key to hasten Geulah in our hands? Listen, there's no Jew that believes in Torah that doesn't believe in Moshiach. So when you do meet someone who's a little bit cynical and doesn't really get it, they're not questioning Moshiach. If they're cynical, they don't get it, and they're like twisting their nose, it's about the talk that it's happening now. That's the part that they don't get. But they definitely believe in it. And they say to them, so what do you believe? When is it going to happen? It's going to happen in the future, but like I don't see it's look outside, I don't see anything that tells me that it's happening now. Look in the newspaper, I don't see anything that tells me it's happening now. That's because we're looking in the wrong place, but we'll talk about it soon. That's one of the big things that the Rebbe tells us. If you look in the right place, you will see with your eyes that the world is like a different world that we've never seen such a world before. And it reminds me of the story in Gemara. The Gemara says that Moshiach is. So the Medrash says Paro had a book of all the different gods. Those who believe in idols have different gods. There's a god of fire and a god of water and a god that does this and a god that does that. So when he said the God of the Israelis came and said that you have to let my people go, I don't know such a God. Where did he look? He looked in his book, the God book. turned the pages, he didn't find it. So the Gemara gives a very interesting analogy that somebody was looking for a Kohen, wanted to find the person who was a Kohen. Where do you go? He went to the cemetery. Of course, the cemeteries where there are dead people, but there's also live people doing things, walking around. Maybe there'll be a Kohen there. There's one place where you'll hardly ever find a Kohen is in a cemetery. They're not allowed to go there. So where you're looking for God in your book of your idols, your gods, that's a joke. So I guess if we want to see Moshiach coming, and a person says, I'm looking in the news and I see this happen and that happen, anti-Semitism, all these crazy things, I don't see Moshiach. So the Rebbe tells us, take a shift a little bit, look at this, look at that, look at the other things. And as we go during class, I'll try to point out, and very often something happens in the news, which is a positive thing, really an unbelievable miracle. And those are the things that help us see more clearly, no, something is going on that's highly unusual. And by the way, I think the experts will tell you that every single that goes by Israel, that Baruch Hashem, everything is okay, miracle. If you think of what's going on, and how many, I remember the 6-day war, I was in Australia at the time, and the Rebbe said to go out and ask people to put on film. We spoke about that. So I went to a hospital to go to different Jewish patients, put on film, and one guy says to me, Rabbi, I want to ask you a question. If all this is true, how come all these miracles only happened in biblical times? Why don't they happen today? What a question. I said, what are you talking about? What just happened in Israel is an incredible miracle. Moshe Dayan, he was the general at the time, the guy with the patch on his eye. He knows these Arabs like his 5 fingers. He knew exactly how to get them. So you can be standing by the Yamsuf, by the splitting of the sea, and you can see the sea split, and you'll say, wow, the wind is blowing in such an angle, and science, I learned that if the wind hits the water, this angle, the water splits, and how many splits into 12 parts because of this and that. In other words, if you want to deny something, you can deny anything. The brain will produce any logic you want to deny anything. Some of you know Rabbi Bell from Montreal. So I remember he was once speaking, and he brought out a really powerful point when he said this, that if you want to deny something, he said, take something like the Holocaust. It happened only that many years ago. There are survivors, children of survivors, people with numbers on their hands, and people that, their families were destroyed, and they are the ones who came from the camps and all that. And there are people today, and a large percentage of people, that they say it never happened. Which means if you want to deny something, we're not talking about who created the world thousands of years ago. Something happened on such a large scale of millions of Jews were killed, millions of non-Jews were killed, a whole operation was going on, and someone come up and said, never happened. The Jews created the story just to get some compassion, but it never happened. So you see that if a person wants to deny something, you can deny it. But if you want to believe something, so you look in the place that will help you strengthen that. So now we're getting to the point of what do we need to do to hasten Geulah? But the big question is who? Some people have the understanding that Mashiach is something so phenomenal that this is not something for Tom, Dick, and Harry to do. This is something for the greatest leaders of Jewry. They could be busy with bringing Mashiach, but not people like us. It's like, imagine, everybody, they tell the story that in Israel, the prime minister of Israel, which at the time was Golda Meir, met with the president of the United States of America. And in the conversation, I don't know if this is true, this is a joke, but the president of the United States said that, I'm a president over, I don't know how many millions of people are in America, 200 million? I'm a president over 200 million people, and you're a prime minister over 3 million people. I said, yeah, but I'm a prime minister over 3 million prime ministers. Everybody sitting there is talking about how to run the wars and how the country should run, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody thinks that they're running it. But the truth is, two people are talking. Israel should do this, Ukraine should do that, Russia should do this. But you have people who are in government. They have a high position in government. They're the ones that can make a difference. But how could people who are ordinary people? We can talk about it, but we can't make anything happen. So this is the feeling about Mashiach. Mashiach is a change, and the whole world is changing. When we said before that all the Jews will come together, we're not only talking about the Jews that live all over the world that know they're Jewish and love Israel. Even Jews who don't know they're Jewish are going to find out that they're Jewish. They're all going to come together. And then eventually all the Jews who lived in previous generations are all going to come together. You're talking about something so phenomenal. How could you say this is in the hands of every one of us? We can do something to make it happen. This is something in the hands of the greatest tzaddikim of the generation only. And the Rebbe keeps emphasizing, no, that the key to redemption is in the hands of every single person. So I just want to bring a few quotes, and where it says, these are the words of the Rebbe. Every single Jew of our generation, and it was a mind shift, because the way most people think, I'm not talking about ordinary people, even people with Torah scholars, the way most people think is, we daven for Mashiach, but we can to say I can do something to literally change the plan, that he should come earlier. That's only for the greatest leaders, the greatest tzaddikim. Every single Jew of our generation, including our young and old, our sons and daughters. It's like borrowing the quote from a verse. Is capable of bringing about the sublime revelations of the days of Mashiach, which fulfill God's ultimate intent in making an abode for himself among mortals in this world. Since the future generation and redemption, not a single Jew will be remaining in exile. It is clear that the task of bringing about the redemption likewise devolves upon every single Jew. This is one of the things that this Geulah is different than other Geulas. When the Jews went out of Egypt, did every single Jew go out of Egypt? The answer is no. It says in Chumash that only a certain amount of Jews went out. There's two opinions. One opinion is that only a fifth went out, and another opinion says that the opposite, 4/5 went out and 1/5 remained. When the Jews went out of exile of Babylon, not everybody went out. A lot of Jews wanted to remain in Babylon. And certainly in later years, in the time of Hanukkah, in the time of Purim, not everybody was part of the process. When Mashiach comes, as this famous song goes, no Jew will be left behind. Every Jew, no matter where they stand now, will go out of Geulah together with Mashiach. And therefore, if the redemption is designated for every single Jew without any exception, so therefore the ability to make it happen is also upon every single Jew without exception. It is self-evident that every single Jew has been given the requisite strength for this. Since Hashem measures his people, and it says, Hashem says, I only demand according to their ability. The Medrash says that Hashem is different than a king of flesh. Kings of flesh very often demand things of other people, not according to their capacity, but according to his capacity. And by the way, it's not only kings, you find this with teachers, you find this sometimes with parents. People are in a position where they're superior to someone else. The demands they make of the other person, they're not thinking of that person and where they stand and what their resources are or the opportunities are, what the capabilities are. If it's easy for them, they expect it to be easy for you. Hashem is infinite, and he's telling us what to do. So the Medrash says Hashem is different. He knows exactly who he created, and he knows our strength. And when he demands things of us, he's demanding it according to our capacity, not according to his capacity. When he rewards us according to his capacity, not according to our capacity. There's something that I'm looking for here. I don't see it. But this is something which I think we can say, the Rebbe repeated this maybe 1,000 times, if not more. And that is that in the Rambam, which is actually a book of halacha, he says something very powerful. And that's sort of the basis for this idea. The Rambam says that before a person goes to do something, they should visualize a scale. and the scale is perfectly balanced. When a scale is perfectly balanced, all you need to do is add a little something on one side, and it's going to tip the scale.
Wait, what?
Before I do something, I should visualize if you have a scale, and the scale is perfectly balanced. It's like this, right?
Yeah.
Now, all I need to do is add this little thing, a little piece of paper, a little something that weighs no matter what, that will tip the scale, because a second ago they were perfectly balanced. And now that I added something that weighs a fraction of an ounce, it'll tip it to one side. So we should visualize that the world is perfectly balanced. And when I do one little thing, a positive thought, a positive action, a positive word, that could tip the scale and bring Moshiach. And the Rambam said it'll bring salvation to the whole world. And the Rebbe always emphasized that the Torah doesn't tell us to visualize things that are not true and just pretend, just as an incentive. That means it's really true that one person could add, and we don't know who that is. It could be a man, could be a woman, could be an older person, could be a younger person, could be a child, does something positive, and that could tip the scale in a very powerful way because the scale is balanced. A number of years ago, someone used this as an example. You probably know, maybe some of you heard about this incident that happened a number of years ago. There was an individual by the name of Rabbi Majeski that had a business in Iowa, and they found that he was hiring Mexicans and it was illegal. And they came across so harsh, very harsh, and they wanted to sentence him for life imprisonment for that. Life imprisonment, which is never happens, but that's another story. They finally lowered it for 27 years imprisonment, which is pretty much almost as good. And they tried the biggest, most powerful people in different places in government to employ them. Everyone used their influence they had. Nothing helped, didn't budge. And then one day, it was just a few years ago, he was called in and said, okay, you're going home. He grabbed his talis and tefillin, left everything and just got on the car, went home. And that was it. It was big. It was incredible. It was almost like a taste of Moshiach because they had videos. The whole world was sort of davening for him. And when the news was heard, they have in the video, Israel, America, Borough Park, Crown Heights, Lakewood, New Jersey, people dancing in the street, rejoicing in the fact that he went out of jail. This Rabbi Majeski. What happened? What happened was that the president of the United States at that time was Trump, pardoned him.
Yeah, I remember.
So they say that the story behind it, that the story behind it was that there was a program for children who are unfortunately very sick and terminally ill, and unfortunately no hope for them, that they tell them they could write to the president and he'll answer them just to make them feel good. Or not. You ask for something and he'll get it for them. So kids ask for toys, kids ask for this, kids ask for that. And I think this kid wrote that he wants the president to visit him, which he said he couldn't do that else. And what did he ask for? He asked for him to pardon this Rubashkin. And that was the kuncha. When he read that, they say that he was very moved by it, and he called in the people, because people were already working on it before. This is only a child, but there were people working with him, called them in. Nobody expected it. He didn't expect it. The jail knew nothing about it. Boom, he's out. So sometimes a child could do something that could affect the whole world.
Wow.
So no one should think of themselves that, who am I? What am I? Because let's remember that, the Rebbe used the mashal of a power keg. We have a power keg full of gunpowder, and then someone has a spark that hits the power keg. And the thing explodes, and God forbid, who knows what could happen. How does a little spark do so much? The spark is not doing it. There's a powder keg. and it's all filled up, ready to explode. All you need to do is one little thing and it'll explode in a positive way. So the world is ready, and so much mitzvahs were done by millions and billions of people throughout the generations. Everything is all set to explode, and one little thing that we do now could do it and would do it. At the end of the day, it'll be somebody who's going to be the last person. I think of it like this is a true story that happened with a nephew who lives upstate New York. He walked into a store, and all of a sudden there's a lot of noise and commotion. Congratulations, he won $100,000. He was the millionth person that walked into the store. He got $100,000.
Wow.
Hashgacha Pratis, that he was the millionth person. All you needed to have one person before him come 1 minute later, whatever. So it was from above. But what happened is, how did he get it? Not because he did something spectacular. It's because there were 900,999 people before him. He was the millionth one. Boom. So there's so much good deeds that were done. All I need to do now is do something very nice to another person, do a certain mitzvah, and the scale is tipped and Mashiach comes. So hopefully there's somebody here in this room so we could really be celebrating you. Okay. Yes.
Just because it's just so like on the topic, my brother, whenever he was up there, every single day he saw Moshiach can come. Whoa. And that the whole world is a giant scale, like you're saying, and each individual is also a tiny scale, like is a scale that's connected to the big scale of the world. And that he saw Moshiach coming every single day, what was going to tip the scale to good, from not so good to good, is whenever we go out of our way to help another person, a Jew. Like,
and he knew nothing about the Sikha or the Rambam at the time that he had these things. Yeah.
Right.
That's incredible.
He saw it, it's happening, it can happen, like you said, with a child and anyone.
Yep. Yeah.
How much was the scale on?
Don't tell her.
Also, like, every time person does good, they always bad at the same time. Like, how can there be a single moment when one person doing good and no bad being done?
Well, sometimes there's just certain things good that they could. It's a moment. We don't know we don't see everything that's happening. But Hashem sees everything that's happening, and we just have to do our part, and we'll get the moment.
I was talking to people about smoking on the shack, like someone's like, why can't the kids just come now? Because like everyone's doing, so many people doing good, but then something at the same time, people doing bad.
Right, but
so how can the shack come if there's still people doing bad things?
Because good is stronger than bad, and eventually the good will.
What type of good is stronger that will outweigh all the bad that
we don't know, so we just have to do good, and then bingo, we'll get it. We don't know which one. Okay, I want to do one more thing. The last one here, the last page. So this is, again, to make clear that Mashiach is not something that's only for tzaddikim and leaders, but every single one of us could do something. So the last part is where it says, the last page, we have the check there. Every Jewish man, woman, and even child ought to augment his divine service in order to bring about the actual coming of Mashiach. One should not rely on others, nor should one pass on this responsibility to others. This is the task of every individual man and woman, and every individual man or woman has to fulfill it himself. Naturally, everybody's expected to do what they can do. I don't have to do what that person does. They don't have to do what I do. But we all could do what we can do, and whatever it is that I can do could make the difference. What does this kind of divine service consist of? Increasing in study of both the revealed Torah and the mystical part of Torah, encouraging others to do likewise, more broadly, making Torah and Yiddishkeit increasingly widespread, disseminating the wellsprings of Chassidus abroad, and this in particular secures the arrival of Melech HaMashiach.
Amen.
Okay. based on this, it doesn't just mean, okay, I guess we didn't do it today, we didn't do it yesterday. It means that every act that we do now is still doing the same thing. It's an accumulation.
Right.
An accumulation. So it could be that at the end of the day, okay, for example, this guy who walked in and he was number 1,000,000. Imagine somebody else was standing outside, he was about to go in, and someone says, excuse me, oh, I remember you. Remember you helped me out there, that chatter for 2 minutes, then he walks into the store and he finds out he could have been the 1,000,000th person. And this guy held him up. So there are things happening all the time that it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
Things happening all the time that because you are number 1,000,000, that's why it happened to you. Ultimately, when Mashiach comes and somebody's going to do that last thought, speech, or act and be Mashiach, it'll still be a result of everything I did, you did, and whatever else did, because that's what tips the scale. Okay, a good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. In the hundreds, like, in the 100,000, like, is that
Just at the little launch. I guess it opens up, or sometimes it sends it from.
Sometimes what?
Sometimes it says it sends it from.
You're more than that's better. Really?
Okay, I want this night. I have a hug, I just get so.
Like
for the school?
Yeah, like my attention is so divided, but now I just get my minor.
Share a story. And so like I try to share a story too. He's come to the dark like to the girls at last semester. And in class we were like hearing these things like I want to share it too. Like our brother literally experiences and saw it like visually happening like in the potential infinite futures that he saw for himself. Like he saw that every single
Okay, I want to tell you right now.
Yes, he was like yeah.
What, like,
Oh, let's go get just. No,
I
I
don't
don't wear.
know about I told you about it.
That was awesome. Every year. Mortality.
By the way, your shirt had this.
No doctors.
Oh my gosh,
No one has ever people asked me about that. They're like, did you go and try and face it in? And he's like, no, I was 18. Like, he, you know, yeah, he's only 20. He's 20. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I don't know, I'm actually gonna go to that's, she said she's not.
Yeah, and so he had 13 times the normal heart attack. And then we had another one, and the second time, he was showing left his body, said goodbye to everyone, so he went up, like, all the way. But I asked him at my time, he was scared to go. He saw it was crazy. Like, so you can count a lot of my things, I have to share with you, and it's like, I don't know, it's he also has a, like, you want to hear from
Right now, you see the rest of
you want to watch it?
Now she's doing that same now, let's write it down, like write down all the numbers, I can just look at my eyeballs. Oh, for next 3 years, let's do that, let's do that.
But I wish you
There's
did.
also like a video that he's right?
Don't worry about scary.
But it's like trying to be like